If you don't know me, I'm the executive director, well, really privileged to be the executive director of the Bush School of Government and Public Service here in Washington, D.C. And we're privileged tonight to have Congressman Sessions with us, representative of the 17th District of the state of Texas. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about some changes that are going on, but Congressman Sessions grew up in Waco, Texas. And then he was just talking about that after going to school in Georgetown, Texas, then you worked for Southwest, really for
Southwestern Bell.
Southwestern Bell became AT&T, that's right.
Well, it was AT&T. Yeah. I was that old.
Yes, sir. And then when it kind of split up, that's right. But the congressman, when he was in high school, actually was here in Washington, D.C., because his father was here climbing, I guess, the ladder of the Department of Justice. If those of you know the family, is really steeped in public service, right? And so I think that's one of the things, sir, that we'll talk about too, is about public service. And then the congressman joined 23 years as a representative, first elected in 1996. And then has served the constituents in Texas since then, but also serving our nation as a public service for 23 years. So, sir, we're privileged to have you here with us tonight. So the format will be that I'll have a conversation briefly with Congressman Sessions, and then I have some questions that many of you, as well as students from College Station, have sent in, and I'll ask some of those questions. And then we'll open up for the audience here to ask some questions, probably some follow-on from some of the conversations that we have. We'll try to finish, roughly around 6:30, because there's a few people in here, sir, that have to go to class at 6:30, but we'll see how that goes at 6:30, depending. And then otherwise, maybe then a chance for some of them to maybe come up and personally say hi.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
That's great. So for those out in the Zoom, if you have a question that you want to send in, please put that in the chat. Your video and audio will be muted. You won't be able to send it in that way. On the bottom of the screen, you have a chance to send that in, and the staff will pass that off to me. So with that, I think all of that administrative action is taken care of. And sir, I think we have an opportunity to have a conversation, but I'll sit down first and give you a chance just to offer some opening comments to a classroom full of students.
Dean, thank you very much. And what an opportunity is to be with you tonight. My best friend over there came in town today, Randy Ford, Coach Randy Ford, and he said, "So did you give up your 2 packs of cigarettes?" And I said, "No, this happens as a result of 4 COVID shots." This is how I don't have COVID, but this is what happens from that, yes, what it does to me. So it tells you don't turn 50 and get 4 shots. What an opportunity for me to be with each of you this evening. The school, Texas A&M, is an outstanding academic and research institution. One that I represented in '97. No, I represented part of Brazos County back then, and became engaged in the somewhat of the life of the university the last couple of years, big time in there. The great Cody Casares is here, one of your outstanding young graduates of the program. But what I want to say to you is that thank you for taking time to listen. I used to be a student, was a student for a long time, still try and be a student, because as a member of Congress, the world is moving very rapidly. The Bush School keeps you up with that. Your fellow students have diverse interests. I have a chance as a member of Congress to do a number of things in the international world, even though that is not where I sit on a committee. But just in my background, I've served as head of the Turkish caucus for a number of years. I received the top award from Spain, like their President's Freedom Award.
Yes,
I received that from Spain for work that I have done with the King and the beautiful people of Spain. I am very close to, was close to President Musharraf in Pakistan, helped him to achieve things that needed to be done back when he was his life was threatened and that entire nation was in real deep trouble. And I am personal friends with the Indians and Mr. Modi, and coined him as the Ronald Reagan of India. And so he takes my calls and he likes me. But international affairs are important to the life of this country. And for you to pick this as the school that you would come to means that with our young deans, not only here, but also the Bush School back at College Station, you will come into contact with leading edge people, not just military, not just State Department, but leading edge thinkers. And I think that I would say to you tonight that I would be remiss if I didn't tell you my two favorite books. I went to Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas, and had a preeminent professor who expected a lot from us, but we studied Hans Morgenthau. And of course, anybody that's, I think, in even anywhere close to studying international affairs will recognize Hans Morgenthau. And it became the basis of what I learned back then, learned well, have studied, but honed as a member of Congress. Because a philosophy, just like as an Eagle Scout, as I am, you learned early on principles. If this does not provide you with a basis of thought, where you can point to what you believe in objectively as a value, then it's not the book I thought it was. I think in almost every single circumstance I've run across, whether it is an analysis of what's in our best interest, an understanding about international affairs, about how we look at allies and what we expect of allies, what they expect of us, all the way to understanding how you form teams and the importance of allies, the importance of working towards whatever the goal is. And then secondly, a book that I was a part of, the author, actually, I didn't know this till the other day, he wrote me a note in here, but is what's called Year of the Rat. And it is a book about how politics and money corrupted the American system to give away our most prized secrets to adversarial countries around the world. And I think that it's important that you know that America has a lot to lose. And we have keen adversaries who will take everything they can get from us and use that against us. And when my dad was the director of the FBI for a guy named Ronald Reagan and George Bush and even President Clinton, these were issues back then that were entirely different than now. Espionage was different, but the theft of intellectual property, the use of high tech to gain advantages and to really destroy what we have is alive and well today. So it's my hope that you will somewhere in your study run across both these books, or at least a discussion about adversarial opportunities as it existed in 1996.
Well, thank you. Thank you, sir. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. I'd like to talk about some of the international policy discussion, but first, a lot of these students here are obviously with Texas A&M and an affinity with Texas A&M and Texas, grounded in public service.
Yes.
A lot of these students are on their way, either in public service or on their way to serve. So you've made a decision in your life to serve in Congress for 23 years. So could you talk to the students about a decision to serve, a decision to be a public servant, a decision to serve others in the country?
Yes, and thank you. I think public service is not always about being elected. it is also about serving your country in the military. I think it's about doing things for the benefit of others. But it's being devoted to the things that you think will create a better world, will make a difference, and one which you can stand, not just to look yourself in the mirror every night, but to really know that you have a passion to do this. And I think that passion sometimes may or may not be the first job you have, may or may not be the first time you've thought about what your opportunities are, but rather a long-range goal of where you see where you want the world to be, and that you can make a difference. And I think that if you're honest about your abilities, you too can make a difference. It's not just, like this thing that we talk about where the guy's walking down the beach and sees, the shellfish and throws them out. And the guy says, who cares? Look, there's 1,000 of them here. And he said, well, it matters to that starfish. It does matter. And it matters when you become engaged, form relationships, and your own personal ethos is involved. It does matter. And it's a good feeling. As a member of Congress, I have a number of rational opportunities and some irrational about things that I become engaged in, some things that just land on your desk. Some people will bring them to you. And I've been a part of, during my period of time, of opening up my mail and finding out that there was a family with a Down syndrome child who've been through 13 different surgeries, and the dad and the mom had to work for the children. But as a result of the mom quitting to take care of the child that was definitely in trouble, they had to go to Medicaid. They lost their family income, half of it. And the father then made a mistake by doing the right thing, took a bonus at the end of the year and took them out of Medicaid, and yet they needed that service to pay for their child. It took us 8 years to pass a piece of legislation that was called the Family Opportunity Act. But the only way it happened was because my 8-year-old Down syndrome son, in the office of the President of the United States, George W. Bush, on a pre-announced basis said to the president, "Thank you for helping people like me." I did not coach Alex to say that. And the president looked at me and said, "Congressman Sessions, what is Alex talking about?" And I said, "Well, Mr. President, it's this bill that helps families to put the child that's in trouble on Medicaid, and the family, then whatever they do, but we take care of the child." We had fought that for 8 years. 8 years where I was after my system, my party, my leaders, including the guy that was fighting Texas Aggie, Joe Barton, that didn't really want any new programs. And the President of the United States, because of a Down syndrome, 8-year-old Down syndrome young man, he listened. And Dennis Hastert called me about 3 weeks later and said, "Your bill will be in the next bill that gets signed." And that was 20 plus years ago, 20 years ago. And now what was an 8-year battle for me was solved out here. I had really nothing to do with it. You will be a part of great things by being involved in going down that path. And I can tell you 100 stories where things like this happens. If you have a good heart, if you're doing things for the right reason, right things will happen.
Well,
So
thank you. Thank
that's
you,
what
sir.
I would
Thank you
say.
for-
Yeah, I get passionate about
Yes,
this,
sir.
and it keeps me in the business. I mean, you
Right.
will want to, to do well, but it's about all of us. It's not about one of us.
Thank you, sir. So you talked about some of the things that you get involved in as far as international policy and
Yes.
international relations. But you're elected by the district in the great state of Texas that sends you to Washington. So how do you balance serving the constituents in Texas with taking on national level issues and international level issues while still serving those in county, in the counties where people that the local, residents that well, but balance that with taking on national security and international issues at the same time?
Part of the success of a rain dance has a lot to do with timing. And early on in my career, I had a chance to meet a guy, his name is Chad Hennings.
An Air Force Academy graduate,
Chad
by the way,
Hennings,
yes, sir.
Air Force Academy graduate, Outland Trophy winner, came to the Air Force Academy from Iowa as a state wrestling champ, defensive tackle for, what's the name of that team? The Dallas
team,
Cowboys.
yes, sir.
And owns these Super Bowl rings.
Yes, he does.
6'9", 270 pounds, but fit, jammed in an A10. And he has more confidence in his life and the life of this country and the life of that our Lord Jesus Christ gives to us and exudes it every day. He became a part of what I did. And he and I formed up in lots of ways across Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And he was with me, but we did things together. I've never spent a weekend in Washington, D.C. when I was elected. So for 22 years, I've never spent a weekend. I go back home every weekend. And it is true that I also go travel and do other things, but I always stop back in the district.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there are ways that you look at how your power base of the things you're trying to accomplish get done. And like I said, it took me 8 years to get this other bill done, and my son did it, and President Bush did it. But we've also had a chance to do other things. There's a bill called Right to Try. And it's very important, and it's one of the functions of the NIH and of our pharmaceutical industries, that where we had people, and it's not my committee, but I got engaged because this woman who is enormously wealthy cares about getting NIH trials done. And they weren't getting done because of a problem of the word inducement. And people were getting induced supposedly to be in a trial. And so I had to think that through and get that done.
Mm-hmm.
That I did not do back in the district. I did up here. And I did that because I went and met them. Routinely, I call agencies and they say, we've never had a member of Congress call. Well, by damn, I'm going to call. We're going to challenge people. Today, I had a conversation with the head of the chairman of the SEC. And while I'm not going to characterize that call, I will tell you, he took the call. I took the call. We talked for about 40 minutes, and it takes direct engagement. You cannot leave that to other people in the room. Listen, but you got to become personally involved, and you got to know what the heck you're talking about. The substance of one's performance and whether they have an ethical basis for what they're doing will ultimately determine the outcome and the success of what you're doing. And you'll hear me say this, but courage, character, and performance cannot be separated. You can't have one of the three. And so I try and balance myself by going home and being with people and seeing them and talking and listening, and then coming up here and finding a way to get it done.
All right. Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, in the international policy realm and international relations, what would you describe as the role of Congress, in international policy or determining in some of our foreign relations? What is the role as you see of Congress?
Well, Probably, and I'm going to shock everybody when I say this, but probably one of the top examples that I've seen is what Speaker Pelosi did by going to Taiwan. Oh, that's wrong. She shouldn't go. Boy, as soon as I heard about it, I got asked about that, and people expected me to be critical of her. I said, absolutely not. She needs to go to Taiwan. She needs to pack up her bags and go over there and to say directly to the world, but to the Taiwanese, that you are a sovereign nation and that you are friends with the United States and we will stand with you. And I think it put the Biden administration on their, made them rethink, oh my gosh, how far out do we go? How can we explain what's happening here? I think Congress has a role. I think Congress has a role to be clear about what we think. And while I don't always agree with Mrs. Pelosi off some of the issues and some of the things she takes, I think we have to be clear. I think we have to be clear about who our friends are. I think we have to be clear about sovereignty issues and world peace. I think we have to be clear about America's intent. America is the greatest nation in the world, and we should not lightly use that. We should understand the balance that comes with that. But likewise, I think you got to stand up when the president of the country is wrong and say that what we did in Afghanistan was an embarrassment, and that we don't want us to be judged by that. Otherwise, we'll be judged by our incompetency or the outcome. So I think it is important, and I think it is difficult for perhaps a newer member of Congress to really put some of this in context, which is easy for me to do because with your dean, I dealt with him. We had people that were in country that we needed to get out, people, a responsibility. And we dealt with the general every day for a couple of weeks. And I saw his leadership and he needed mine, and we worked together. But America and Congress should have the same goals, but it doesn't mean that it will always be said for the country or for the world to hear. And I think Congress has that role. We speak with the money that we authorize. We speak with the things we get engaged in, but we also need to remember that when the military is involved at water's edge, we need to be damn careful about what signals we send. And I think that is something that a lot of people think is optional.
Yes, sir.
And I don't respect those things once it gets to that level.
Oh, thank you, sir. Sir, I have a number of questions that have been sent in from there, but before I do that, I'd like to try one here in the audience. If there's somebody here who has a question for the congressman, please use the mic because those on Zoom will be able to hear, or I can repeat the question if somebody has a question.
This young man over here.
Yeah, go right ahead. I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned early on, talk about books, especially Year of the Rat, protecting American IP, intellectual property. Do you think there are tools available that we're not using that we could better use to protect American technology? Because it is the strength of our economy.
Let me repeat the question so those watching that the question is about intellectual property, sir. Do you think there's some things that other tools we could be using or more that we should be using to protect intellectual property?
Yes, I do. And thank you for the question. There's a relatively new piece of legislation that Tucker Anderson, class of 93, who's my senior legal counsel, and I talked about a month ago. And he'll probably say, no, it's 3 weeks or 9 days, but it's about a month ago. And his life is a little bit different than mine, but about a month ago. And it is a piece of legislation that has a Senate side sponsor and a House side sponsor. And it really acknowledges the reality. And I think if there's one thing that I would say to students, we spend a lot of time on theory. I think you ought to balance it with reality. And the reality is that our country, our educational institutions have a lot of foreign influence on them. Saudi Arabia, the kingdom, sends people over on a free trip, pays for everything cash, and they can get into universities. And I'm not going to pick on SMU, I'm not going to pick on University of Chicago, but they like the money. And they're in their programs. And these programs have a strong reliance, as we do, off R&D. And it could be intellectual property. You went high, you didn't say intellectual property intelligence. You didn't say intellectual property military. You said intellectual property. And there's more evidence every day, gathering evidence that these countries use master's and doctoral programs to actually use what I call our toolkit. We have better tools, we have faster computers, we have leading edge things and ideas, maps, the way to look at things. And the other side is catching up with us with XFELs and with cyclotrons and a lot of the other leading edge tools. But they come here and they learn and they take it. But we also have presidents who will give up because they think this is the right way to do it. Our ships allow them on our aircraft carriers. When no country has, when China had no aircraft carriers, President Clinton openly invited them to visit our 13. And they came back and rebuilt one in record time because they got the blueprints for it. The F-35, the advanced fighter, China came out with it, looks just like ours. Wonder how that happens. It's got all the same bells and whistles and attributes. Well, not exactly, but pretty close. The radar is still better for us, but so what I would say is that we need to admit that our educational institutions are fostering the ability to bring students in who take our information and it leaves. And this piece of legislation that I was in reference to that Senior Legal Counsel Tucker Anderson is a part of says, you're going to have to report what you do. And it's going to put at risk all the money you get if you don't fully comply and we know what you're doing. I think transparency is really important. In this case, it's overhead. It is, clearly it is. But I think that if we're going to have the reliance upon whether it's Texas A&M and RELIS or the physics program or the cyclotron or an XFEL or whatever we have, and whether it's at Stanford or whether it's at University of Chicago, UC Davis, MIT, we still have to have an understanding about who's got access to that and learns how to drive that vehicle or that thing. And we are quickly losing the intellectual property and the investment that we had. And there it was done politically. It was done as a political contribution to gain this and then go through the Department of Commerce to get them to say it's okay. In this case, in the book that we've got, it was L'Oreal. And the specific example that the Chinese were after is gyroscope oriented. And it was as missiles would go up, their missiles would start to wobble. Well, in flight, as you go through the entry stages, as you wobble can put you hundreds of miles out. And they wanted to be where we are, where they can hit within either 30 meters, depending upon how big it is, or 6 meters. And they wanted to be able to move that to export away from export control to where a business actually made money by selling it to the Chinese. Well, what the heck? It's just a business. Well, no, it is classified in a national secret. And in fact, they got the Clinton administration to say, Laurel, okay to do that. But what they started with was, you can help them do it, but that's not doing it. Yeah, it is. So we've got to be careful, and our adversaries out there can catch up on $1 trillion plan quickly, but they're really good at it when you help them.
Thanks, sir. Out to the audience here. Any?
Sorry, you're asking simple 10-second questions and I answer it in 4.5 hours.
It's perfect, sir. It's perfect. Please go ahead.
Congressman, with Russia's
I can hear you.
Unexpectedly poor performance in Ukraine, has that caused Congress to reevaluate not only the threat they pose, but also our own capabilities?
You want to repeat?
Yeah,
that?
I'll repeat that for, if you didn't hear that in Zoom, was the demonstrated, I guess, incompetence of the Russian military. Is that going to cause us to rethink our own military capability or rethink our assessment of the Russian capability?
I think it's important to note that people who really understand Russia or who've been there, as I have been for 20 years, they're a nation that can't put 2 and 2 and 2 together. Their math people are really good. But the infrastructure there, their ability to do things, their system is fundamentally broken. What you're looking at is, and we had heard this years ago with all of their naval operations, that they have a large number of submarines that were staffed by half as many. Some go down, they crash, they burn, they're lost. They have lost a good number of them. We have seen where they have a diminishment in professional ranks. They do not do as we do. They're conscripts and then literally colonels and generals. And you have a knife at your throat to go perform. You're not trained. There's no esprit. Sometimes you don't get paid. The working conditions are not only bad, but the ability to back that up are worse. There is nationalism involved. There is a huge mother homeland feeling that is built into these veterans, that the spirit is very strong in Russia, very strong. It's part of their nationalism, but the actual performance of their military is either overstated or under-delivered. So were we surprised? I think it was because of what we may think about Ukraine. We still know Russia's a superpower. Well, they're a superpower like some other countries that have the bomb, but they have a delivery system. But I would say, I don't underestimate that Ukraine got help in using leading edge abilities against the Russians. And nobody in here was, a couple of you were old enough in January of '91. We had a war in Iraq. It was a 100-hour war, and we slaughtered the tanks that the fifth largest army in the world had. We destroyed them quickly. They would shoot at us. We would directly see the incoming and hit them before their stuff ever even arrived. And that's a pretty good punch power. That's downrange. That's not in a lab. And so I think the Russians lacked the real spirit of why they were doing it too. It was an undefined thing. These guys thought they were going for an exercise. They didn't know they were going for a war. And so I think it was a total mismatch. Were we surprised? No, I think our intelligence is now trying to decide we better be careful because they're going to be fodder for somebody to come after them. China, I don't know, you know, China wants Taiwan. Russia has a lot of fuel, I mean, a lot of energy. And these corrupt nations, China is corrupt, Russia is corrupt, the Iranians are corrupt, and are they adversaries against each other? Well, in the mid-70s, China and Russia were. I don't know where they are today, but Allied forces have taken care of Russia, and they put themselves in danger.
Yes,
No
sir.
surprise.
Well, thanks, sir. Sir, a number of students have written in asking about immigration policy, border security, the southern border, you know, the Texas border. So a number of questions. So I'll lump them together and I'll say, and I'll ask it this way. From your position, sir, what do you think will be the role of Congress in immigration, in immigration policy or in immigration decisions or solutions? What will be the role of Congress?
Both parties are incapable to effectively land on even an answer that is sustainable for the other body.
Yes, sir.
The Senate has tried. They tried under Kennedy McCain. It was a disaster. I was a part of that disaster. I was not on their side. I told them that's the wrong way to do it. But, you know, they're senators, they're royalty, they're entitled to their answer. And that's kind of like the hot plate that nobody wants to come back to.
Yes, sir.
I think it is incredibly important that we solve this issue. I have been for what I call a guest worker plan for a long period of time. American Express can stay up with 1 billion transactions a day, but our government is not up to it. They have, administrations have intentionally been for something, but not for leading. We go back to the Becerra program under President Reagan, and people always pointed all the problems. We have to solve this problem. And when we fail to do that, it causes presidents to do things that I think are well beyond their executive duties. Mm-hmm. And we go this side and then we come this side and we struggle with that. I think the emergency of the border is very apparent to most people. Our young governor, Abbott, yesterday, I think, maybe the day before, referred to this as an invasion. Well, he was in reference to the Constitution. And imminent danger is what we are in. And every city in this country today is a border city because of what the president has done, what the Democratic Party has allowed and done. And I would just say to us that the Texas delegation, Republican delegation, believes that, perhaps as I do, but I do, it's the #1 issue facing our nation. We have 300 people dying a day of drug overdoses. We've had drug overdoses from 5 years ago go from 56,000 to 71,000 to over 100,000 today. That is, in essence, there will be not just 300 a day, but we can count on over 100, probably 120,000 people between the ages of 18 and 35 dying in this country. It is the #1 reason for death in that age group. And we kind of, as I grew up, we watched, John Belushi die of heroin overdose. Oh, well, that's a one-off. Now there's people every day or every month, these big icons that are dying. It is, the young people are stuck in a drug culture. We have a genuine need, as seen by other countries, to provide these things. And there's a consumer here. And it is an addictive product. Heroin, meth, fentanyl. There was a man arrested on Monday in New York City, 20,000 fentanyl tabs. No bail. I mean, they just let him out. They arrested him and he was gone. 20,000 tablets. So we've got this conversation that is happening in this country. Who cares? Who cares if we lose 100,000 people? Let's just go do whatever we want to do. And for a parent and for someone who sees this carnage of this addiction, it's hard. We've got to protect the border. It has less to do with people and more to do with the contraband that's coming in and the problems that occur. So the Texas delegation is going to take this on.
Well, thanks, sir. So as you saw, some of the students had to get up because they needed to go on to class. So we're at time here, sir, but I'll give you a last minute. You've got students that we're hoping will be decision makers here soon. If they aren't already in their positions, or a few years from now, they'll be in senior policy, decision-making roles, perhaps members of Congress. But sir, I'll give you the last word with the students.
Well, I want to encourage you, and I want to say to you that the Texas A&M, as this awesome academic institution and credentialing that comes from Aggie spirit and working together, is unmatched. I don't know of any other university, and others try, but they don't get there. You bring people in, they understand what they're doing. We have Aggies in our office all the time. Find your pathway. But I would say to you, know who you are. Know what needs to be done. Come well grounded in academia. Really know what you're talking about. Don't guess, because I think you've got leaders here or there who are willing to care about you and mature your thinking and use us as a backboard of, just like the tennis backboard, just bang that ball against us and get our responses. Educating yourself is important, but learning how to listen and learn from that and feed your soul should be something that you get really good at, and don't give up on it ever. Use it, read, think, comprehend, look for things that excite you. And last of all, don't forget, you come from a great institution that has a name which matters. And go use that as a springboard for doing great things for other people. Dean, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.